Okay, as I promised some of you that the elimination method video is going to be out today. The reason why I didn't do it is because it's something that I really have to teach you in class, so I don't want just a video. So nowadays, I mean, after a week, very likely that you will have some idea, at least some idea how to start this process, and so this video will be, much more useful for students to watch it now. So just a little bit of background. When we talk about elimination method, instead of substitution was the one that I think most people cannot do it. But elimination is really much easier. And the idea of elimination is you're looking at two variables vertically. Vertically is actually the key. So you're looking at maybe a set of number, and they're in this little box. So let's say I have 5x over here, and then I also have a 5x. So what you're trying to think of is, if I have this vertically, I want to somehow get it to 0. So how can you achieve that? These two numbers, they're identically the same, they have the same sign, they're both positive. So the ideal situation is 5x minus 5x is going to be equal to your 0. And the sign in red, the subtraction, the operation, is going to carry on with the rest of the variable. So once you can spot this potential of add or subtract, then the rest of the process is not too difficult. So there are a few variations. I think there are altogether 4 of these. So you do have to be careful about that. So in another scenario, I may have like negative 4y and negative 4y. And you're trying to get to 0 because they are identically the same. So you're just going to subtract. Okay, so again, it's subtract. So pay attention to these two scenarios. They are exactly the same. They have the same signs, and whether they're positive or negative, you subtract. And then you have another scenario, let's say like 3x versus a negative 3x. Okay. Now, most of the time when people look at it, you don't even think about why you're getting the 0. Okay, in your mind, you're saying that like, oh, it's 3x minus 3x. Just pay attention to this. If they are exactly the same, like 3x and 3x, and they have opposite sign, the operation is going to be a plus. Okay, so when you're looking at it without the operation over here, in your mind, you're basically saying that, yeah, I'm just subtracting them. But what you're trying to do is you have a positive 3 adding a negative 3. So if you can get through this kind of, idea, the elimination process is really not too bad. The last thing, I don't want to just keep it a variable. Sometimes I may have a negative 2, I have a 2 over here. I want to get it to 0. Then again, same number, different sign, that's going to be a plus. So once you are familiar with these 4 very basic concepts, then the elimination method is very easy to carry out in the beginning, and then it's just the rest of the steps that some of you may have problems still with that, and I don't know why, but it's just solving equation. Okay, so in this video, I'm just going to do 2. One is relatively simple, the other one is a little bit more difficult. So hopefully this will help. We are moving out of this topic. Your test is going to come up sometime next week. Okay, so as I said, there are 2 equations. This is the first one, this is the second one, and looking at this, we are always trying to pay attention to the variables. Okay, so we are looking at the x, we are looking at the y. Our very first question is whether we have the variable that they are exactly the same. So x, I have 1x over here, I have 5x, so they are not the same. I have a 7y, I have a 2y, they are not exactly the same. So somehow I have to get either the x or the y to be exactly the same. Okay, so by exactly the same, I mean I want a 5x over here if I want to choose x, or I want like 14y and 14y over here. So they are going to be the same. And the process for it is to somehow multiply it, and so I can make the equations the same. So in this scenario, it's really not too bad because I know this is 1x, this is 5x. If I were to make this to a 5x, all I have to do is multiply everything by 5. Okay, multiply everything by 5. I do not have to do anything with the second equation, so I'm going to stick with the first equation. Multiply everything by 5. Just be careful about that. When you're multiplying, that means you're multiplying this to x, you're multiplying that to y, you're also going to multiply that to 11, they like negative 11 as well. So when I was checking your work from Friday, I noticed that some of you, yes, you remember multiplying this, but you forgot the rest of that. Just be careful about that. So I'm going to multiply everything. So my first equation is going to turn into 5x. 5 times negative 7, negative 35. 5 times negative 11, negative 55. Okay, so after what I did over here, my first equation actually turned into this, and the system I'm trying to solve is way over here. So I do not have to worry about the very first one anymore. This is the one that actually gave me 5x. They're the same. They're the same. So just like the previous slides, I actually said, oh, if 5x and 5x are the same, then I can decide on which operation I'm going to use, and it's going to be a subtract because they're exactly the same. So I'm going to subtract this. Okay, go back to the elementary school level. We are going to subtract the things vertically. So 5x minus 5x, that's what it means by elimination. Eliminating this variable because it turns into 0. And then we have 2y minus negative 35y. As I said before, this can be tricky. Some people just do 2 minus 35. Pay attention to the process. I start with the 2. I start with the 2 first. I start with the 2, and then I look at my operation, and then I go back and check what is that number. So as I said in class, if you are not certain about this, just write that out. 2y minus a negative 35y. So if you write this out, instead of doing it in your head, it should be okay. You may need to use calculator for this. If you do, make sure you type everything correctly. This should turn out to be a positive 37y. So I'm still just doing things vertically. After that, again, negative 18 minus my negative 55. Now this is a little bit more difficult. It's basically 55 minus 18. 55 minus 18 is going to be, don't feel like doing it, lazy, 37. Okay, so it's really not too bad. If you have a calculator in hand, are they doing it again? Anyhow, once you get to this part, 37 times something is equal to 37. Alternatively, you can just divide everything by that number in front of it. Okay, if it's a negative number, you divide by that negative number. I have a 37, so I'm dividing everything by 37. So your y is just equal to 1. Okay, come out very, very nicely for this one. Okay, and that's basically the very first process. Do you need to draw those arrows? No. Do you need to know how to do this? Definitely yes. And once you get to this stage, you know y is equal to 1. You just want to find out what x is. Okay, any of this equation will work. If you feel like to use the very first one before multiplying, that's fine. You can use this one. That's fine. You can use this one. It's fine. It's up to you. My choices would normally be the original one because I didn't multiply anything. This one is very simple. I don't have like a 5x over here. So I would normally definitely choose this one. Okay. So I'm in the process of finding y. What I'm really trying to do is I'm going to use this equation right over here, and I'm going to start copying this. Let's keep it in green. So x, I'm going to copy that. Minus, I'm going to copy that. 7, I'm going to copy that. And then y, I'm not copying the y. The reason for that is, just look over here. My y is equal to what? 1. That's what it means by substitution. You replace that variable by 1. And then carry on with this copying is equal to negative 11. Alright? So, and then the rest of this is just multiplying these two together. X is equal to x minus 7 is equal to negative 11. And then I am trying to keep the x on the left hand side for as long as possible, because remember that at the end x is equal to something. So I'm moving this to the other side. Moving the whole thing is just opposite of that, which is plus. And finally you get your answer, x is equal to negative 4. So your final answer is negative 4, 1. Okay? We can always check the result. We can always check this result. I can always go back to decimals and just check and see if it's correct or not. X minus 7y is equal to negative 11. And then 5x plus 2y is equal to negative 18. Negative 4, 1. Negative 4, 1. There you go. Correct. So some of you are still just using decimals and give me the answer. I need to see steps. If let's say we're doing the final exam, they say use whichever method to do this. I would like to see all of this. Okay, not until I see any of this, I'm not gonna give you the marks for it. Alright, okay, that's the easier one, because I multiply the first one, I can get the 5x. In most scenario, you don't get that. You don't get that choice. You have to be rather careful about this. This is still not too bad, as a matter of fact. Okay, but I will do it the long way, just so we know what's going on. Okay, so let's say this one. I look at the y, I look at the x, they're not the same. So I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to be simple, I'm just going to pick y. Okay, some of you may say, well, why are you not picking 4? I can times 4 and get 16. Well, that's kind of like defeating the purpose. I want to show you the more difficult way. So let's say I'm going to pick y, because why not? These two numbers, 9 and 7, pay attention to that. The easiest way to do this is you just multiply by the opposite number. So if I have a pair of number 9 and 7, the first equation I may want to do is multiply everything by 7. Because 9 times 7 is going to be 63. And then for the other one, you just times the opposite. You can kind of see how that goes. Okay, I'll draw the arrows for you. So this get multiplied over there, that gets multiplied over there. Then you're gonna get the 63. So your very first variable is going to be alright. Okay, just keep that in mind. Because I'm choosing this, so I have to multiply both. So I'll have a negative 63y plus 4 times 7, 28. 20 times 7 is 140. So my first equation turns into this. My second equation, I know that this is going to be negative 63. If not, multiply it out. 16 times 9 is a little bit more difficult. I'll just do it on decimals. 16 times 9. 144. 144x 720. That's the second one. Okay, now this one is a little bit more difficult, as you can see, because the numbers are much bigger, but we'll deal with that. So in this scenario, they are the same thing. Negative 63, negative 63y, they are the same thing. So because they're exactly the same, I'm going to subtract. Okay, I'm going to subtract everything. So that get crossed out. 20x, I'll write that out. X minus 144x. It's not a nice number. 20 minus 144. Negative 116, negative 116x. 140 minus 720. Negative 580. And then it's still the same process. We are going to divide both sides by negative 116. It's going to be a positive number. 580 and negative 580 divided by negative 1165. Nice number. Be careful about those negative. If you're using a calculator, make sure you put all of that in there. So it's going to be 5. So x is just going to be 5. Not too bad. The first part is done. So I'm going to go back to find one of these equations to find the other variable. If we started with x, so we are going to find y now. Let me remove off this. So we'll just pick the very first one. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. So I'm just going to copy the first one. Negative 9y. Negative 9y is going to be negative 9y and plus 4. What do I have? X over here. So what do I have for x now? Just look up, the very last line you did. Is going to be 5 is equal to 20. So copy everything, and then now we are at the very last stage. So negative 9y states 4 times 5 should be able to do it. Okay. Oh, and then I want to subtract this. Those processes are always the same. I want to keep the y over here, so I'm going to remove this. Moving this positive 20 is going to be the opposite of adding. That disappear. 20 minus 20. 0. Negative 9 times something is 0. That basically forces it as 0, but if you still have to go through this step, do this step. So y is equal to 0. Okay, so the answer is quite nice, 50. Write it out over here, 50, and we'll check it. We'll go back to decimals and hopefully we'll get the same result. Do you have to check it every time? It's a nice habit. Negative 9y plus 4x equals 20, right? And then the other one, negative 7y plus 16x is equal to 80. Okay, where do they intersect? 1 second. Oh, 80. Not 8x. So 50. 50. There you go. We got that correct. So elimination, I do think is a little bit easier compared to substitution. But this procedure at the end, like this part, is what they would consider the substitution. You are substituting x is equal to 5 into one of the equations. Okay, same over here. This, whenever you're changing this parenthesis, this y to 1, that's also the part of the substitution. And I haven't graded all of your paper just yet, but looking at it, there are lots of, I would say, computational error. You may be able to do the first part, but this computational error down here, you have to be really mindful about that, because if you get one of the variable correct, I just cannot see why you cannot learn this bit. Okay, we've been doing this for the past year. So that's all for this little video. In fact, it's much longer than I would expect. However, elimination is something very important. Your test for this chapter is coming up this week, and if you're still confused about elimination, please check this out. You really can leave Algebra 1 without this. So that's all I have to say. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.